3 members present and 1 being on Zoom. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Notice to the public. The Board of Supervisors welcomes comments from the public during the time allowed for discussion. You are requested to approach the microphone, state your name for the record, and limit the time used to present your remarks in order that others may be given the opportunity to speak. The normal process on any agenda item is for the chairperson to read the item from the agenda. The board is given an opportunity to comment on the issue and/or place a motion on the floor. An opportunity for discussion may be presented, at which time the public may participate and a roll call vote will follow. Number 1, approval or amendment of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the agenda as printed.
Mr. Chairman, I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as printed. Roll call vote.
Solosik.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Patton.
Yes.
Motion passes. Consent agenda. Approved minutes from regular session of September 29, 2020. Approved claims. Approved claims as audited and authorized the county auditor and recorder to issue payment of the same. The listing of claims paid at this meeting and all claims paid in the month of October will be published as part of the first meeting in November.
Mr. Chairman, I motion to approve the consent agenda as printed.
Mr. Chairman, I'd second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as printed. Roll call vote.
Solosik.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Patton.
Yes.
Motion passes. Number 4, Marshall County Youth and Shelter Services. David Hicks, YSS Director, will present his first quarter report. David, good morning. Can you hear?
Good morning. Good morning. This is my first Zoom call with the Board of Supervisors. So great to see technology working to our advantage for once, it seems like. I want to present first quarter report. I did send that report out to Lisa a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully you have that. As part of our contract with the county, we provide some early intervention crisis support for anybody who kind of walks in the door. And so we primarily that's 18 and under individuals. So we reported 30 of such walk-ins in that first quarter, July, August, and September. Of those 10, those are the 18 and under folks. We provide just some brief crisis intervention, a little bit of case management, and then refer them out to wherever they need to go that best meets their needs. We are still doing most of our services via telehealth. We are practicing social distancing, of course. We are doing a few home visits as necessary. Some of the other things we have going on, we started July 1, we received emergency food and shelter grant, which was formerly operated by Salvation Army. So we had about $10,000 to provide rent assistance with, another $4,000 for utility help, and $1,000 or so for some food cards. And to this point, we've almost spent the entire $10,000 on rent assistance for those in the county. We have about $3,000 left for utility help for those in the county that need it, and that's for water, electric, or gas, whatever, what have you. So we've spent down that rent assistance pretty quickly, but we've got some utility help still available going forward into the winter months. Another unique opportunity we have is we've partnered with a group called Cope Notes. That is the founder is a friend of mine, so that provides text-based services that promote brain development, positive mental health. It's supposed to reduce anxiety, increase healthy responses to negative events. So we've got about 100 slots for free for 6 months for those in Marshall County that are either under 18 or are parenting children who need that mainly kind of daily support via text. These texts are vetted by psychologists and psychiatrists to make sure they don't trigger people. But it's peer support, brain development, encouraging positive responses to negative events. And as we're all kind of, glued to our phones, once these texts come in every day, people look at them, they read them. It may be a brain exercise, it may be encouragement, it may be a different way to approach problems. But we've got numerous slots available for 6-month subscriptions for free. You don't have to be a YSS client. There's no catch. Just have to email me. I'll get a phone number and the initials of that individual, and we'll get them slotted in to receive Cope Notes 6 months for free. And like I said, this is through DCAT. So any Marshall County, a resident who's under 18, we certainly want parent permission before they subscribe to this, but we can also give the subscription to parents of teen children and younger who may be experiencing some anxiety, depression, and just need that additional support. And since we're all glued to our phones most of the time, that support comes right to us every day. Any questions or concerns? Any updates I can provide?
David, I heard the presentation on Cope Notes here a few months ago through decategorization.
Yeah.
And, I thought it was a great plan. Was a little disappointed in the number of people that were signing up for it. But
yeah, we are the first in Iowa to do this. So we are the guinea pigs. The founder and CEO is a good friend of mine. So I've been with him kind of every step of the way. So we're the first in Iowa to do this. So it's kind of an unknown program. So, there's people who don't quite grasp what that is, and not everyone gets a smartphone. We realize that that's a luxury. So it is a bit unknown, but we just hope that people would sign up and give it a trial run for 6 months. If they choose to pay for it after that, that's up to them. But it's a great opportunity to get free peer support all through the county when it's kind of hard to maybe see a therapist every day. And it doesn't replace therapy, but just provides that additional peer support that maybe on a daily basis could really help people.
very good. Thanks, David.
You're welcome.
Anything-
Any other questions or thoughts?
David, thank you for your continued good work. It's always a pleasure. I've enjoyed listening to your reports and going back and forth for the last 10 years. And your organization does tremendous work. And I know we've got more than just what we put in our non-departmental portion of your budget, what comes through district court services and the rest. But I congratulate you and really appreciate the job you guys do.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I think we certainly try and do the best we can. Of course, you probably know about the partnership we have coming up with the police department for the city of Marshalltown. A little bit of an update on that. We've been meeting weekly since that city council meeting. We've got a budget developed. We've got a little bit of a job description. We'll continue to massage that. We're looking at a January 1st start date. We've got a lot to do before then. It'll be a heavy lift, but it'll benefit a lot of people. It excites me and frightens me at the same time, but I think we can do a good job with this.
It's going to be an interesting program to watch develop.
Yeah, as I've said, we'll learn a lot more by making mistakes than we do by getting it right. It's a pilot. Our budget's really going only open to probably hiring 2 full-time staff and then a smattering of some on-call folks. And when the police need you 24 hours a day, we'll just try and do the best we can and stagger it so the police can get the services they need. And we think it's just value added to our law enforcement folks.
Very good, David. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. I'm going to sign off. Have a good rest of your week, everybody.
Take care.
Yep, you too. Bye.
Okay, we're going to move on to number 5, proposed changes to the Marshall County Weed Commissioner position. Discussion of proposed changes to the Marshall County Weed Commissioner position. We have Mike Stegman with us here this morning, and Mike, take it away. This is your project.
Good morning, thank you. Well, it's kind of a combined project between current planning, zoning, health and weed commissioner Todd Apfel, who approached me earlier this year with the idea of changing weed commissioner's duties to that for under the Conservation Board. With that, I prepared some information and submitted to you for review regarding, I assume the first channel or first order of operation would be to transfer funds from Todd's budget to that of the Conservation Board so that we can proceed filling a position to partake in those duties. It would be a combined position for that of the weed commissioners and then a Marshall County Conservation Board maintenance position, which we have needed for some years. That position I could use today with additional help and not just from derecho cleanup, which we're plugging away at, but additional maintenance duties that we've accumulated through the years and future additions to that in the near future. So,
Have you been in the process of looking for someone here the last few months? Are you short one person right now, and this would be a replacement?
No, all of our positions are full right now. This would be a newly created position.
I see. Okay. All right. Dave and Bill, do you have any thoughts on this?
I would have liked to heard about this a little sooner than we did. Todd hadn't said anything to us. Todd's our employee, and he hadn't said anything to us. I was a little disappointed that we didn't know about it ahead of time. The other thing, I'd like to spend a little time looking at this, Michael. I'm not prepared today to vote one way or the other here on this thing. You've got quite a little money here that we're talking about, and would like to look at that here some.
Dave, what's your feedback?
Well, I've looked at the report and read through all the information that Mike has given us. I've had some conversations with a few of our neighboring counties and several of other counties that I come into contact with through juvenile detention. And across the board, everybody handles this particular thing slightly differently. Take Tama County, for example. Tama County has an individual that was their part-time courthouse maintenance person that does it on the side. It's not a full-time job whatsoever. 20% at best, and quite frankly, I'd have to say the weed commissioner is probably only a 10% job. So that's one way they handle it. You go down to Jasper County, and Jasper runs it through their secondary road division. They have the equipment. They do some spot spraying. They still, we would still be entertaining our spraying on the east and west half of the county with one of the companies that does it. We've pretty much been consistently with the same company over a number of years. And many of the counties do it in completely different ways. There's nobody that does this any one way. I looked at Mike's dollar amount that he put down, and I've got some concerns there. It's the budget for it has grown substantially. I'm along with Bill. I think we need to look at this a little bit further and compare some notes and dig deeper into this. I'm not ready to make a decision today also.
Dave, is it in your intention to continue to still use a spray service once a year?
I think we're going to have to.
We skipped it completely this year.
I'm not going to recommend that we discontinue spraying. I don't think if we go to every other year, we're going to have to closely monitor so that we don't get behind the curves on our noxious weeds. The goofy part about the noxious weed program is there's some things that are noxious weeds that aren't even on the listing of noxious weeds. What some people consider a weed, other people consider something that's a necessity. It's kind of one of those strange things. And then when you couple the fact that you've got the state of Iowa, that all of their roads that go through Marshall County, the state is not required to spray, and we do. So it's one of those things. It's crazy, literally down to the point where if we get a weed complaint that is on state property, we have to literally send a letter to the state and say, hey, you need to go spray this.
I guess my thought was that this position would replace hiring people to come in and do the spray that we have done in the past. You evidently didn't view it that way, though. Is that fair to say?
Well, I'm not necessarily in favor of that. I think from a position of spending the taxpayers' money is the wisest. This is one of these situations where it's better off to pay a company to come in and do it, so we don't have the expense of 11 paid holidays, health insurance, IPERS, Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, work comp. All those expenses go away when we subcontract this out to an outside agency.
Well, then it's the liability aspect too, David.
You're going to have liability. You know, you're going to have a licensed applicator that is licensed at this level of chemicals. You know, there's a lot to look at this, more than just in the report.
I think it costs us about $70,000 a year to bring those spray folks in. Am I right?
That's pretty close to what we've done, and we've typically done the east half of the county in the spring and then the west half of the county in the fall, and then we flip-flop it the next year and do the west in the fall and the east in the spring. We've had some years when there's been so much dust on the foliage that the second half spraying has not been done because the chemical wouldn't get through to the plant at all. I think we just need to look at this further, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, formulate questions, let me know. We can have a conversation with Todd too, to see what his thoughts are.
Yes.
That's
Yeah, that'd be
fine.
good.
Let me know, when we want to get together and throw ideas at each other,
All right.
or what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's fine.
One of the things that I've always been concerned about is that it seems like it never gets sprayed in the spring until late June, mid-June. And I'd like to see it sprayed mid-May. That's when you actually kill things.
Before things see that.
Yeah.
See that.
Yeah.
That's one advantage to doing it in-house. We could control that kind of thing, so.
Yeah, well, then, I didn't fully we need to talk about it some more.
Yeah.
Because a sprayer in one is looking here at $12,000. Chemical is $5,000. And I'm not sure, Mike, does that cover half of the county then, or what was your
The idea there was spot treatment.
spot treatment?
Correct.
Yeah, I didn't think that it would handle that. So your thought was not to spray the whole ditch?
No, you're wasting chemical when you do that, and you're killing desirable plants. When you're broadcasting 2,4-D, you're killing plants that are beneficial for pollinators and diversity of life. It goes beyond just spraying weeds.
Like, for instance, what type of? plants that we talked about?
Flowering plants, cone flowers, blazing star, the milkweed, it's been so in the news in the last few years. The wild rose, any flowering plant that would be beneficial to pollinators that would in turn.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is kind of a new, it's all kind of fresh to us, new to us. So we do need a little more discussion on this to make any kind of decisions, so.
I'd
One
like
of the-
to see those weeds killed that we were talking about. I don't disagree on something.
We've even got dissension there then.
Yeah, a little bit.
Dave, what were you saying?
One of the other counties that I spoke with, I found quite interesting. They had it under their secondary roads department. And they had an individual that worked for secondary roads that also farmed. That individual had an applicator's license, and that individual also happened to be their maintenance superintendent that was up and down the roads every single day on a consistent basis, monitoring, not only doing the secondary roads where the problems were and checking out on how his individuals were performing their duties and going out and interacting with the public on secondary roads issue. But he also had the applicator's license from being in the farming profession, and they were doing the spraying. So, you know, there was some economies of scale there, and an individual is actually doing some double duty. I found quite a bit of that when I've spoke to the other counties, that they don't have necessarily one individual doing this. It's been worked into another program, whether it be under the conservation area or under secondary roads. There's a lot of different options we've got going forward.
And Dave, on this situation with the farmer/employee doing the spraying, then who carries the liability insurance?
Well, this individual was an employee of the county. He was their maintenance superintendent. So the county already had the liability on that individual, and I believe they just expanded it to cover the chemicals. And, you know, from time to time, every year, when we've had spraying done in the past, every year you have a little drift or overspray, and somebody loses a shrub or a tree, and you run into these situations.
Yeah, that's why I was talking about it.
Yep.
Well, I guess, how should we proceed here? Should we give it some discussion?
I'd like to have more discussion on this.
Meet with Todd maybe, and Mike.
Todd and Paul, secondary
And
roads,
Paul
that's-
also, yeah,
Yeah,
all right,
I'd really appreciate that opportunity.
Sure. Okay, well, let's
I agree.
proceed. All right, very good. Thank you, Mike, for bringing this to us. Number 6, possible additional counties to the CICS region. Discussion and possible action to possibly add 3 additional counties to the CICS region.
The 3 counties involved here are Webster, Wright, Saragota. And they have been in a different region, and they came to CICS and asked if they could become part of the CICS region. And we talked about it in the CICS meetings. But I think it's one of the things that is important is that I can take to the CICS meeting and either say we're in favor of it, we're not in favor of it, or we're in favor of some of them. Because I believe that we're going to have, when we go to our CICS meeting, we're going to have three motions. This county, and this county. And that's one of the things that we need to work at. And there was some difficulties with at least one of the counties when they were in the other region. One of the people, one of the supervisors from one of our northern counties requested that these people not continue, that supervisor not continue in being the representative and have someone else do that. And it got real quiet, but then they said they would do that. And the reason for that is to try and not have problems. Now, we could still have problems. We could say we don't want to do this. The possibility there would be to not do it. And
You've been pretty close to this. You've been involved in a lot of meetings and a lot of research.
And if we would not do it with one of them, then where would they go? We don't know where they would go. They've already pulled out of the other one that they were in, which is over in the Waterloo, Cedar Falls area. And so there's a possibility that HDS would come in and say, we're going to put you somewhere. And they could put it back with us.
With you again.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I don't know. I will go and represent us at our meeting, however you want me to do that.
I can't make a recommendation, I guess, at this point. You've done all the work on this, and I guess I would leave it up to you to make the decision that needs to be made.
I've checked, I've visited with other counties who were in the other region with them, and they didn't say don't do it. They said be careful.
Be buyer beware.
Yeah. David, you have talked to some of these other counties because of your work with the juvenile
Detention.
program.
Yeah.
In Eldora.
I've had conversations with several of these counties, and there's a lot of overlap. The overlap is on the counties is where I represent us on Central Iowa Juvenile Detention. And there's also overlap in our 2nd Judicial District. And I have had the same warnings from these other counties. They won't come right out and say don't, but they're being very, very cautious. And I guess the takeaway I give from it, if I was to make a recommendation to Bill and to our county, would be to vote on the counties that are coming in separately and to not vote to accept the county in question that has created the angst and the problems in the other district. Even if they pulled out of Waterloo, DHS will come back later and probably have to put them into one of the regions, and whether it is CICS or back into the Waterloo region is unknown, but I would have a tendency to think that they would probably put them right back into the region that they were at. But yes, speaking with these other I'm sorry.
There's a region in Northwest Iowa that's a possibility for them too.
Right.
But
I don't see CICS, I don't see DHS coming back in if we vote to exclude this county of coming back in and forcing them into our group at CICS, especially considering if the representatives from the remaining counties that sit on that were the ones that voted not to accept that county. And my recommendation would be not to accept that county.
Would you like to vote on that aspect? David, would you have a motion to not accept the one county and accept the other two?
I will. Do you want me to name the county or not?
We're gonna have to.
Okay. I would motion that when Bill gets the opportunity to vote on these individual counties, to accept all counties with the exception of Webster.
I would second that. We can go on. Steve, you see where we're going here?
Mm-hmm.
The other two counties is Wright and Saragota.
Right.
And there are 11 counties now in our group. Start out with 10 from the original put together deal. David, you were probably involved in that with the original 10, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
Then we added Green here a couple of years ago, and Green's been a good county, no problems at all.
And every single one of these counties is also represented on juvenile detention as a member county. So I come into contact with the individual representatives from these counties constantly.
Any questions, Steve?
No.
I've kind of circled this a little bit.
I've read the reports and all the information you've given us, and yeah, I've got a pretty good idea of what's happening here.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the floor then to accept, and we have a second, of course, to accept all counties with the exception of Webster into the new CICS region. Is there any other?
It's been moved and seconded.
Moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion at this point?
No, sir.
How I've got it written is to accept all counties except Webster to the CICS region, and in parentheses, i.e. except Wright and Saragota. So I've listed them out.
All right, very good. Roll call vote?
Solosik,
No.
Thompson,
Yes.
Patton,
Yes.
Very good. Motion passes. Number 7, radio project update. A request to give update on the radio project. Rhonda's here this morning. Would you like to start? Would you?
I would absolutely. Okay, so same thing that I've been talking about the last couple of meetings. We're still having some significant problems with the radios. Again, a completely different issue for if anyone's on the phone that hasn't been on the previous meetings. This is not damage from the derecho. These are two separate issues. So still having a little bit of a problem. One of the things that, you know, I've looked at even with my own commission is what do I need to plan for moving forward? So I know that, you know, there's plans in the work. I know that everyone, you know, recognizes that there's an issue. I know that everyone is looking at the fact that there's an issue, but you've got to have time for planning. And I'm that girl that likes to be 10 steps ahead, right? You gentlemen all know that. So, you know, I'm looking at my budgets, but I have to also think that, you know, there's other budgets to consider. So, what I'm wondering is kind of, you know, where are we at like right now? Are we still looking at July? Because that's 9 months down the road. And guys, I'll be honest with you. I just think that the longer we wait on this, the more problems that we're going to have. It went through and survived And obviously the tornado was a very specific location, but the derecho was a broader location. I'm now thinking that this is the first community that I've moved to that has had this many significant natural disasters in such a short time. I'm thinking, what did I get myself into, y'all? But,
Welcome to Iowa.
we have to think about that, because if you also look at the age of that system, I mean, we all know that, okay, it's been going down, but now we're at, okay, we really need to take the next step. So, where are we at? Does that kind of make sense?
I visited with Rhonda over the time, and I mentioned that we've got a plan that we can actually borrow money from ourselves and get this thing started. That's really all I told her.
Okay.
And because we really haven't had a motion or anything to do this ourselves, and we need to do that, so that people know that we're actually doing something.
I agree. It's time to do something here. I'm getting pressure from people outside of the law enforcement and fire department that originally had pushed and promoted this project. People are starting to become concerned now.
Well, and
Dan?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, jump in, David.
We instructed Nan quite some time ago to look into borrowing from ourselves in this particular fund. It is legal for us to do it. With you guys' permission, I would like to name what fund we are going to borrow from and why we are waiting another couple months to see where we're going to be with the balances on that fund. I'm not going to say it until you guys say, David, go ahead and voice your thoughts.
Why don't you go ahead and do that, would you?
I agree.
Dan, do you also concur?
Yes, and then I'll have
Okay.
some to add.
Okay. A while back, we tried to figure out how we could finance this without going to an outside agency. And the only part that we are going to finance is going to be what the county is going to do, being the tower only. This financing that we're talking about is not radios. It's not the contract for maintenance and upkeep. Those responsibilities are going to be on the individual entities, whether they are one of the rural fire departments or whether it's another city. The fund we're talking about, and it's legal for us to borrow from it, is our health fund. It's at approximately $4.3 million. Going back in history, when I first started out as a supervisor 10 years ago, it was at approximately 1.7 million. We've managed this fund very well. We've allowed a 50% reduction in our employees' health care costs. We've done some managed wellness programs, and that fund has continued to grow. It is legal for us to borrow from that fund. We do have to pay it back. We also have to charge ourselves an interest rate. And what I would recommend is, when you look at the bond rating that we have, if we were to go out in the bond market today, I would imagine our interest rate would be in the neighborhood of 0.5 to 0.75%. I would recommend we probably charge ourselves the same interest rate and replace that money. But what this is going to give us an opportunity to do, if we get a couple more months down the road here and we see how our claims have come in on this health fund, and we don't have any large claims sitting out there that can turn this health fund around and draw from it, I'm going to recommend that we borrow from that and repay it over a 3 or a 4-year period, so that it doesn't have a tremendous negative effect on the tax-paying public, and that we can get this project up and running. All 3 supervisors are in agreement that it is something we need to do. Unfortunately, the individuals that brought this to our attention brought it to our attention so late that we weren't able to get it in this year's fiscal budget. And once you set your budget, you cannot levy more, but you can make amendments. The typical time that we do a budget amendment is in the month of February. I think we could probably say we're going to borrow from this fund without going through our amendments, and we'll have a real good idea what our fund balance is going to be that we're going to borrow from by the end of December when we do our final meeting with our end of quarter meeting with our insurance people and look at possible claims that we have coming in. But I think it's an excellent area for us to borrow from, get the project going, which is needed, and be as gentle to the taxpayers as possible without having the attorney's fees from bonding fees, without having the additional bonding expense on an annual basis. And actually, we're borrowing from ourselves and repaying ourselves. So we're taking from one taxpayer's pocket and putting it right back in, which will be the kindest thing to do from the taxpayer's perspective. And we can also get this project up and running.
Dave, I'm going to interrupt there because our payback is more than 1 year. We will still have to go through Ehlers and Cooney and set this up very similar to if we'd have done an essential purpose bond.
Okay.
But we would be paying ourselves back. You get to do that borrowing differently, like you described, if it's less than 1 year.
Did Ehlers and Cooney, when you contacted them, did they give you any idea what they were going to charge us to set that up?
You did not give me authority to do that. You just,
Okay.
yeah, I have not done that.
And I would assume if we set that up, typically when you go to a bonding company, the individual bonding company that sells you that bond, they get an annual payment for the length of the bond. I'm assuming, seeing as how we're setting the bond up ourselves, that we can forego that annual payment also.
There may be some ways that, yeah, we can save a little bit of money on this, yes.
Okay.
Do I understand? Go ahead, Dave.
I would recommend that we pursue this action. And I would also recommend that we authorize the auditor recorder to have discussions with Ehlers and Cooney to forward the contract from Raycom on to Ehlers and Cooney, who is one of our representatives in the legal field. The reason I want them to overlook this contract is the contract is with Raycom. We should not have our local county attorney review this contract because she happens to be married to the owner of Raycom. So there's some possible conflict of interest that I'd like to eliminate there. And I think it would be better if we had a third party overlook the contract, but I'd like to get this rolling, put the contract in the hands of Ehlers and Cooney, and authorize Nan to pursue finding what our costs are going to be to run this up, and hopefully look at funding this after we have our meeting with Bernie Lowe and Associates, after we're halfway through our budget year with our healthcare program.
That will be sometime in January then.
Correct. But it's still going to get us 6 months earlier than if we were going out and doing this in the next fiscal year. So by doing this, it's going to knock 6 months off the time frame right off the bat.
If I may, will that delay, if we wait until January, will that delay us through the winter because of how bad the winters are here? Is there any way, I haven't been involved in those conversations with Raycom, but is there any way to get the ball rolling faster with them so that they can do pre-prep work?
Well, their pre-PEP work is going to be site selection, not necessarily building of any towers. So honestly, their site selection is probably going to take possibly 2 to 3 months. We'd have to ask either Mike Miller or his advisors on that for a time frame. But build out wise, it's going to be a number of months before they even start on the tower anyway. This is more of purchasing the equipment that they needed and to make the initial agreements.
Dave, is there any way that we could visit with with Skip, a month from now and make some kind of decisions. I think are we looking at maybe $1 million to pull out of that account?
No, we need 2.7.
You're wanting to pull the whole thing out?
Well, or if we're
Yeah.
gonna pay payments, if we're gonna make payments out of it, so that'd be one of the questions to Ehlers, if we can just pull, because when I seen the contract, it wasn't paying all of it up front. There was payments
No,
due at
it's-
different times.
It's broke down over probably almost a year's worth.
Yeah, it was
over a
even
year.
maybe a little more than a year of payments.
To
So-
get the ball rolling with this, I think we only needed 2 payments of $450,000.
Yeah, I think we needed like 900,000 pretty quickly.
So that was my intention, was just to pull out 900,000 out of that account then. if
Well,
that's-
and one
that
thing we
fund.
could do is, we've got our first quarter under our belt. Skip in here to give us an update through September 30th. Get that first quarter to know, how does that first quarter look?
And if we started that first quarter, wouldn't they be able to actually start the project? I mean, yes, there's more money needed, but we could,
They can place the order.
right.
I think they have a site selected,
I think they do
but
too.
but it's not bought or rented or whatever, because they talked about that.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
that would be
This
a
is
bill-
Diana Richardson with Raycom. You're right, we have selected a potential site there, but it will require us, in coordination with the county, working with the landowner to get permission to, either acquire the site or have them let us use the site. So those kind of activities start upon contract signing. We're not opposed to working with you on that ahead with the, give us a letter of intent, maybe to say our intention is we're going to be moving forward with this in January. We'd like to start, working on land acquisition for the site. So we can take that offline and discuss with you, and we do want to help you get it off the ground as quick as we can.
And if that's the case, the other thing is, if we don't have to pull the full amount out of our health fund and borrow it immediately, if we can do it in steps, we can monitor that health fund, how it's going along. And if we see we're getting some large claims, some specialty health claims in on it that are drawing that fund down, we can seek alternatives at that point. So if we only need to pull a small amount on, whether it's 450,000 or $500,000 or $750,000 up front, it may give us some options.
Absolutely. Nan has some.
Yeah, I think it was 450 payments,
It was.
pretty close
Yes,
together.
it
So
was.
it hit 900,000 within the first couple months.
Okay.
But it
That
wasn't,
lets us get into our new budget at that point.
well, that would be out of this year if we started it now.
That would be out of this year, but the rest of the dollars though,
We could
we
get
would be
deferred
budgeting.
into the next budget year.
Yes.
Well, and going back and talking in the budget, guys, I've been very adamant on our health fund never going below 2.25 million. I've been there when it was low and we worried. And in talking with Skip from Bernie Lowe and Associates, he thought the lowest you could go would be about 1.7, and I'm much more comfortable with that fund not going below 2.25 million.
I agree.
I know it may come of a surprise to everybody that I'm a little bit of a fiscal conservative, but I want to keep that fund very healthy, balanced. In today's day and age, with health claims coming in, you can go through a year where you can have a bunch of large claims that stay underneath our reinsurance, and you can see that fund drop fairly rapidly. We've enjoyed a lot of good years with our health claims, and that fund is growing. And I want to be very careful about not drawing that too low.
Yeah.
We've got 156 staff,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it only takes a couple of really bad heart attacks.
Well, remember though, up to 50,000, at 50,000, then we have insurance.
That's true.
So we
Right.
need, a lot of people having those $50,000
To clean out that
to clean out that fund.
it would take 80 catastrophic situations.
Right, which is
It would.
half of our staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree with you completely, Dave. I think we try to be as conservative as we can about taking dollars out of that account.
I
And
mean, guys, I'll tell you, we've worked a lot of years to get the health insurance around the way it is in this fund, which has been a tremendous benefit, not only to our employees, but to the taxpayers. And we haven't increased the levy for the health insurance fund for a long time. And I'd sure like to continue that process.
And one reason that that fund is so healthy is because our staff have done a really good job getting their physicals, getting the stuff, and using generic medicines and things. They've done a really good job, and without that, I don't think we'd be anywhere near as good as we are.
we're fortunate to have a healthy group.
Yes.
So that's why we're where we're at.
You know, in the last meeting, I asked everybody to be patient and to allow us some more time. This was the reason we needed the more time, was to get closer to the end of our halfway through this year with our health insurance, and to see where those claims were. At this time, I'm not aware of any large claims coming in, but I want to hear that from our health insurance people in case they've got some information that we don't.
I will reach out to Skip and get that meeting scheduled so we can see where we are for the first quarter. They usually can know if there's anything large coming in as well, so we can get a feel for where we're at. And I will get in touch with Ehlers, getting the contract to them. I'll work with Diana getting the most recent version, and we should be able to, move on this in a couple weeks, 4 weeks, depending on how quickly we can get Skip in here.
I think we should be able to get this accomplished within a month time frame.
Do you think that we'd be able to have like it on the agenda for next month to have even
action item?
An action item?
Yes, yeah, that would be with
Because
action.
that way, in 2 weeks, we could potentially have an action item on this and get moving on it.
As far as I would be concerned, if we get the remainder of our information from our insurance people, we can hold a special section, even if we're in between the two dates of our normal board meetings.
You cut out a little bit, but I think we got it.
Yeah.
Great.
We can always hold a special session if we have to.
Absolutely, anytime.
Hey guys, it's John Thomas from State Center. I just have one question for you. I know that I've talked to all the supervisors pretty much independently, and I know where we're at on individual responsibility for radios and maintenance. I started working on my budget for the next 3 years a couple of weeks ago. I talked to some of the fire departments, and the concern they have, and this is a question I've talked with a couple of supervisors about, was some of these fire departments have $10,000 and $20,000 annual budgets, but are going to have $40,000 and $50,000 radio needs. Is there still a mechanism where the county is willing to be the loaner, if you will, to help out these smaller agencies with those radios? Or given how you're paying for it, will they need to find their own funding source? And that offer may or may not still be on the table. It was never formally on the table. It was just a discussion item.
I think it was always formally on the table that we can assist anybody that needs the assistance.
Okay.
The difference is I've talked to a number of these departments, and many of them have said, we don't need to borrow the money. I've gotten answers from some of the other departments that have said, we're probably going to get a better deal at our local financial institution. Yours might be the very one I'm talking about. You've got a tremendous bank in your community. They may give you a better deal than what we're going to be able to charge. We don't know those things.
Well, and I'll be honest, Dave. State Center isn't the concern. State Center is not. We're fortunate in State Center. It's the small.
I know where the concerns are. And once again, it's their responsibility to pay for those equipment, no matter than it's any different than any of their other equipment. what we've needed and what we've asked Chief Fonts to provide us with time and time again is what those needs are, who those needs are from, and we've never heard a single word back. So we don't know what those financial needs are or whom they're from. It's awful hard for us to make a commitment when we can't get the information out of the very people we've asked the commitment for.
Well, I tell you what, this is the most promising progress I've seen. I've only been kind of working on this with you guys for about 6 months, but I can assure you that in 2 weeks, you'll have a list of what fire department needs what assistance from the county, because I've been talking to those fire departments. I know Chief Fonts has talked to those fire departments. And now that we actually have a time frame from which we can make some educated decisions and budgeting on, we'll be able to know how much they can kick in and how much they're going to need. So we'll have that for you in 2 weeks, Dave.
Sounds good.
John, the word loan is not what we're using. We will help facilitate a bond for these fire departments and cities, but that's not a loan from us. But because of our government entity, we'll be able to help them get a bond. So that's kind of where we're at here.
We can be the borrowing mechanism, but make no mistake about it. It is the responsibility of each individual entity to repay the bond, any associated costs with the acquisition of that bond.
Understood. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. This is great news for all of us. So,
well, John, quite frankly and honestly, this isn't absolutely one single thing we haven't said a dozen times.
Hey guys, I have.
We've said it a dozen times. We've been very clear from day one. We've asked for extra time, and it's like it's fallen on deaf ears, and it's been pretty doggone disappointing.
Hey guys, I have, before we close this topic, I do have a question, and please understand, this is from the girl from the outside, okay? Because I really do. I come from communities that don't have this high reliance on volunteerism. So now I'm in a new community where, there's certain entities are automatically paid, but there's a lot in Marshall County that is volunteer driven. So here's my question, and I'm just asking for consideration at this point because I really feel like it needs to be considered. So the communities have gone through the tornado 2 years ago, and now we've gone through this derecho, and I'm hearing a lot about people closing shop and closing doors, and farmers not being able to really go and do this, and we have these smaller communities that are volunteer driven that are potentially losing their livelihood at the same time. Is there a mechanism or a thought in place for these communities that may not be able to get these radios? Some may, and that's great, but if they don't have the ability, is that something that can be included in this? Because if you have a community that doesn't have the ability or the way, there's still people living in that community. Fire is different than any other aspect of emergency services. Fire doubles every 30 seconds. If somebody has to come from an outside community into a community that doesn't have the ability to respond, or they don't have a fire department anymore because they can't afford it, you're looking at a total loss. Does that kind of make, I would request a potential reconsideration for those thought process.
Each individual community's budget is a combination of two things. If there isn't any incorporated areas, it comes from the townships to provide the mechanism of funding this. And, if the county is going to step up and provide the funding mechanism for the repayment of this, these individual areas can determine how many years they want to extend those payments out. So it's not a position of they can't afford it. the funding mechanism in the township and the individual communities that are within these fire districts already exists. They just have to fund it themselves. No different. This is equipment purchases. This is no different than personal protection equipment for the firefighters. This is no different than the facilities that the equipment is housed in. This is no different than the trucks. The county does not buy any of that equipment, and it's not going to buy this equipment. We will, and on the other hand, put a mechanism in if there's funding problems to stretch those payments out over a number of budget years so that there's adequate ability to fund them.
Okay, so there has been some thought into those that are going to struggle a little bit more. So it would just be like a longer payment plan or
Exactly. These individual departments or districts are going to have to come up with A, what their dollar needs are, if any, B, how many years they want to stretch it out. But what everybody has to understand, the longer they stretch it out, even at a small percentage of interest, it's going to increase the cost. You know, I've spoken with a couple departments that have said, you know, we're going to spend about $30,000 here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have a fundraiser for it, and they don't see any issue.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I raised the concern because I just, you know, I see, again, coming in from the outside, I see what I see, and I feel like I have to share that information because if it's something that we maybe haven't considered, and it sounds like you've considered it, I just want to make sure it's in our forethought of all of the entities of Marshall County, if that makes sense. So.
Should we try to keep that part of it separate from what we're wanting to do
Oh, I
right
would say
now
yes,
at this
yes,
time?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, we've got to get all that billed. It's about an 18-month out,
It
but
is.
with this conversation and making the commitment as they go into the budget meetings with the fire districts, I know when I was a township clerk, we'd be beginning to meet with them before, you know, people went south and that type of thing to
Sure.
know and get ready for budget time in March, which is just around the corner, hard to
Right.
believe. So it's good to know this sooner rather than later for the budget process.
Good.
Do we need a motion at this point to do anything, or
We
are we just in the
can't.
process of?
We can't, because this was just a
Yes.
discussion item,
All right.
but we can, if we get things rolling, we can do it in 2 to 4 weeks, or like Dave said, have a special
Yeah.
Okay.
in between
Very
then.
good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is the right thing to do here, gentlemen. I thank you for your input, Dave, and appreciate the comments and the feedback.
Well,
So,
like I said, we just needed some time and for some patience for individuals to understand that from day one, we've said, yes, this is something the county's responsibility is going to take care of. Give us the time to figure out how we're going to take care of it in a fiscally prudent manner. And I believe we've done that. I believe today we have been very respectful of the taxpayer's burden. And we have also, without question, said this is the responsibility of the county to take care of these towers.
very good. Well, this is the right thing to do here. So we'll move on. We're on number 8, final 2020 census update. We have Lisa Gassman with us this morning. She's going to provide a final 2020 census update.
Yeah.
You're very happy? You just
I
got back from
am.
vacation?
I am in the census. We're almost done with that. They're still looking at that October 31st date, I believe, unless that's changed again, but we're in good shape. We're at 99.9% completed census, and that's almost not only in the state of Iowa, but it's almost throughout the whole United States. There's just a handful of states that they're 99 point something. Okay, everyone is. So, you know, when you look at 2 weeks ago and we were at 95%, and here we are at 99.9, I would assume in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be right on target there at 100%. So So yeah, this will be my final update there, and I'm glad to see that we're getting where we want to get to. And you know, it's been a little bit of a journey for me. This is the first time I've ever helped with this. Sherry and I took this on in the spring to kind of help people get going and get signed up, get their census completed in the spring of this year, and we're wrapping it up here end of October. So
Very good.
that's what I
Well,
know.
thank you for taking this project on. This comes under the umbrella of other duties as assigned. And
Correct.
And you did this with a smile on your face. So thank you very much for helping this happen. Let's see, Board of Supervisor meetings. Whether to continue to have the Board of Supervisors meetings via Zoom only, or see about using Great Western Bank Basement plus Zoom. Man, I think this is something that you've been working on.
Yes, I haven't really seen much more chatter with the county auditors on this, any additional information. I've not done any research on how other counties are doing that. I could do that, but I'm not going to until after election. So, you know, it's just something if we want to consider meeting just like this, because it doesn't allow the public to come in here. I know the city is still limiting the number that come in to their space so that they can properly social distance in that space. And then the remainder are by Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Even if we go back to meeting in person and having restricted access and social distancing, I would like to continue to offer all of our meetings on Zoom.
Yes.
Without question. The amount of individuals that have signed up to watch these meetings and the participation so that nobody has to travel from outside of other areas within the county to be able to watch instantly what's going on and to participate. I think the level of public participation we have had in these meetings is greater than any time I've ever seen personally. And, you know, I've said it before and I'll say it again, good government requires active citizen participation. And without question, these Zoom meetings have allowed that.
Yep, it's been a positive for the
Yes.
COVID. That's been one of the positive things that's come out of this.
It has for sure.
pandemic.
It really allows people, because for nothing else, as you mentioned, it just cuts down the travel time.
Yep.
And allows people, you know, we think we're just a small county here, but you know, it does take a while to drive in from the corner of the county to get in the building and that type of thing. And it just allows people to know what's going on a lot easier.
Now, that being said, if we do start holding them in the basement, I want to make sure we've got the mechanism called OWL that we use, because it makes the transmission and the participation seamless. I know when we've tried a Zoom meeting at juvenile detention up in Eldora and we've had 26 different counties participating, had we have had it on OWL, it would have gone seamless. And when we did it just simply on Zoom, it was absolutely miserable.
Yeah, that's just your technology. The OWL really does
Right.
add with the pictures. I've not had issues using my computer. So on any Zoom meetings, except at my home, and that's my internet, that's not the computer. So that's a different issue.
And the issue we've had is some people, when they would contact, because there's generally about 26 different counties that participate when we're at juvenile detention. And the issue we had is some were on Zoom, some would call in on their cell phone. There was that lag of time that the motion would take, or somebody making a second. It was a real pain in the backside. But with the OWL technology, and that's what we're going to do in the future if we do them up in Eldora, is to copy exactly what James has done with our IT department here.
All right, so to recap then, we're not going to do anything until after the election.
Well, I
Make
could check
decisions.
with James. I'll follow up with James and talk to him about whether the OWL technology can be put in the basement, and we would then change our format just a little bit. We'd still have the Zoom connection, And we would figure out how many people we could get in there safely and get that number on there.
I believe our additional meeting owls showed up maybe late last week. I got a shipping confirmation and a delivery.
Yeah, okay.
James, I have a question because we need to probably get one of those up in Eldora. What is the cost of that owl?
Let me pull it up real quick and just double check. I don't want to get
Because
it
we're
wrong.
we're looking into one of them also.
Sure. They are not cheap devices, but for what they do, they really are beneficial. Let's see here. There are 2 levels. You'd want the Pro version, and they're, let's just call it about $1,000.
That little thing there, that little gray thing,
Oh,
that's the owl.
And before we make that move, James and I can do some testing then, now that the owl has arrived. I know we ordered it quite some time ago, but as you can guess, all this kind of technology, because of all the Zoom and all this stuff takes a little longer than it used to, so.
We did have to go through a few vendors before we found one in stock, and ironically, Amazon was the one that had it in stock, not the governmental ones.
There you go.
All right, very good. Number 10, public forum. It's a time set aside for the public to make comments on topics of county business other than those listed on this agenda. No action will be taken on any of these topics brought up in the public forum. Here we go.
You go, you do it.
Short notice, but we haven't, we played this one a little close to the vest because we were worried about time frame and weather and stuff. But the spire is planned to go on the building tomorrow morning.
What?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. Tomorrow morning, the crane will be here about 7:30. They have probably an hour or so's worth of setup. They'll do a test pick on the spire itself to make sure it's within weight parameters, but it's not really a concern. I think the most they're looking at is probably 40% capacity of the crane, which is well within limits. We were a little bit worried about how the wind was going to be tomorrow, but talking with our contractor, Midwest, they say they will lift it anywhere up to a 32-mile-an-hour wind, which is a little excessive in my mind, but they're the professionals, so.
Well, if you look at it, it's not like the dome. It's a whole different, it's a lot airier and air can blow through it and it's not as big and all of those types of things. So courthouse tomorrow is limited. You know, I'm sure none of you all would be in here anyway, but no parking in the circle, all of that kind of stuff. So everybody inside, we've communicated with them as well. And it'll be a very short period. It's not going to be like with the dome where we're out all day.
Yeah, it'll be pretty quick. After we do a test lift, there will be some miscellaneous stuff that they're going to lift up into the dome to have it there, because after the spire's on, there's nothing else going in that hole. So everything that's big that needs to be in there is going to be placed quick. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this thing go up between 9 and 10 o'clock.
Say 11 at the latest.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Lucas, are we going to have cameras on it again like we had with the dome lift?
Yeah, absolutely. The plan is right now to do 3 different cameras. We have 2 360 cameras that we utilized in the last 2 major lifts. And also we're going to put a GoPro camera on the headache ball of the crane, so facing straight down. So we'll have some really neat footage of it, and hopefully everything goes smooth.
Are we going to be able to zoom that where we can get a message out to the general public that they'll be able to watch this from the comfort of their own home on Zoom, so that we don't have some of the complaints we had last time of everybody being downtown and social distancing?
We're live streaming part of it from the ground, but the stuff that Lucas is talking about is more high functioning video, and that'll be available afterwards. But usually Deb sits down in the main area of the grass out front and takes equipment and live streams it on Facebook and possibly YouTube, but definitely Facebook.
If we can get that done and have the live streaming, I would highly recommend that we contact all of our individuals in the press community, the radio stations, both of the newspapers, put the announcement in with that Zoom address so people get some understanding that they can watch it at home.
Yeah, we'll reach out. We wanted to have this meeting with you guys first. We'll send out a press communication shortly after this, and like James was saying, the Zoom's going to be tough. We'll do a Facebook Live and probably a YouTube Live thing. So,
Yeah.
but we'll get some connection information out to the press when we do that too.
Wonderful.
Real quick thing, just got a phone call from Jasper County. Their engineer has left. They need to borrow an engineer to sign papers. And we have done this in the past. And so I want to throw that out. We need to talk to Paul about it though too, and see where we're at here. And when are you coming back, Mr. Thompson? Day or two?
Well, now that we're going to do the pick and the spire this morning, I may try to wrap up my stuff sometime this morning and head back, which would put me back late tonight. But in case I'm not able to do that, I'll be heading back in the morning. So if we're going to have a special session, let's do it for Thursday. I know in the past when we've had issues that our neighboring counties, being either Hardin or Tama, have allowed us to have their engineer sign the documents in case we need the signature of a licensed engineer. And they've done that with no charge. And we've also done it for other counties. This is kind of like mutual aid with the fire departments. It's just one of the things of being a good neighbor with the neighboring counties. And I don't even know if we have to have a board session to allow that. We can. I know there's been a lot of cooperation with the neighboring engineers, and if we have to have a special session, we can sure do it Thursday morning.
Okay.
I'm sure that we'd only need a special if we had some sort of a contract. In the beginning, I'm sure we can just, give permission for him to do that. Just,
It's not really we've never really had a contract.
do we have a
No.
2080 or something like that? When we've done it, because I know there was a time period that we had
Yeah.
somebody else. So we can do some research, but I'm not sure unless there's something to sign.
The research would be a visit with Paul.
There'd be the
As far as I'm
research.
concerned, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
can you?
I
do
would do that immediately.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
And then I will call them back and tell them we're working on this and we think this is a possibility.
All right.
They're good people.
Very good.
I
And did you say Jasper?
Yes, Jasper.
Okay.
I would like to report that on October 26th, we will be having a public meeting going into closed session. It will be our mediation with EMC Insurance. So it's just something, folks will see that kind of watch the board agendas coming out. They'll see that coming out and wonder what it is. And that is what it's going to be. But because it is legal, we will go into closed
That's
session.
at 10 o'clock, right?
That's at 10 o'clock. So not our normal time either, but we're working with all the councils, of course, and
And that could be most of the day? Is that what I'm hearing?
I told 3-ish.
3-ish, yes. Okay.
Yeah, so plan on. I'm
What
hoping
day
you
is
let
that
us-
going to be again?
October 26th.
It's a Monday.
Okay.
10 o'clock.
Yes, 10 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Steve, I just heard from our Larry McCain, who is our census worker that comes to the bank, and he
Yes.
said that they are just on a day-by-day basis only.
I
So
see.
I think, as it wraps up, and they don't know when that'll be, today could be his last day.
Day at a time.
Don't know, day
Day
at
at
a
a
time.
time.
Day at a
Okay.
time.
All right. Any other public comment?
10:24, 10:23,
10:23?
whatever, okay?
Next regular session in October 27, 2020 at 9:05 a.m. All business to be acted upon at this session should be submitted to the County Auditor Recorder's Office or the Board of Supervisors Office by Thursday, October 22nd, 2020 at 1:00 p.m. There being no further business to come before the board, the meeting is adjourned at 10:24 a.m.
Yep.
All right.
Very good.
Thank you.